Fun and clean, but easily manic. Yo, what's up? It's someone that's no one, and welcome back to today's report. Today's report was sent in by an anonymous user, where he took 3-methyl PCP with some cannabis. And here's the full report details. Okay, so we got quite the banger here today with this report. Shouts out to this user for sending this in, appreciate you, bro. But this is a new one for the channel with 3-methyl PCP, or 3-ME PCP. If you don't know, there's a whole bunch of dissociatives like this in the research chemical market. Some of which we've covered, like 3-MeO PCP, 3-HO PCP, and some others. They all seem to have their differences in ways, which we'll get a good idea of how this acts here, as we'll get his first impressions. It's really interesting and one I'm sure you'll enjoy, so without further ado, let's dive right into this. Hey, I wanted to share this report on 3-methyl PCP I wrote. I took approximately a total of 13 milligrams of 3-methyl PCP, mixed with edibles and hash smoked. I take the smallest amount I can to do an allergy test, approximately 0.5 to 1 milligrams if I had to guess. I proceed to insufflate it. To my surprise, it's noticeable in that a slight stinging creeps up my nose, which immediately makes me nervous to proceed snorting the other dose late, but at the same time intrigued, as I've never snorted anything this painful. I snorted 2CB before, but that wasn't very noticeable at the same dose I did, which was around 10 milligrams. To start out, I weigh out between 3 to 5 milligrams of slightly clumpy tan white powder. The smell is chemical. It smells a bit like paint, which surprised me. I proceed to insufflate the tiny pile of powder, and after a few seconds, a strong, intense stabbing stinging begins. Tears begin to well up in my left eye, and I start thinking about how bad it will sting. The following minute, it proceeds to intensify in stinging, but overall the pain is short-lasting. It did leave my nose very runny and sore though. It was obvious this substance is not meant to be inside the nasal passage. After 4 minutes, some slight body sensations start, such as slight spaciness dissociation creeping up, but it could be placebo. After some more time passes, it is impossible to ignore the effects. A slight stimulation and mania has begun, and my mind is becoming less clouded and more clear-headed, as well as focused. I proceed to enjoy the effects of this low, insufflated dose for around 40 minutes before redosing orally. Up to this point, the effects were very subtle, yet apparent. It's hard to put into words, as you feel quite sober mentally when sitting down not doing much. But if you get up and start walking around, it becomes very obvious how dissociated the mind is from the body. I proceed to pour approximately 7 milligrams of tan powder I had weighed under my tongue, and after a moment, it begins stinging and burning. I proceed to wash it down with a drink, as it's starting to feel too caustic for my liking. It left my tongue feeling odd and numb. At this point, it is 40 minutes since I had insufflated the first dose. The onset of the oral dose is slow and gradual, with my body starting to feel more dissociated, but it's very different compared to 3-MeO PCE, which I tried many times previously in various doses. It's much less sedating, more subtle, in some ways at least, more stimulating, and just in general, more of an upper feel. Much more clear-headed headspace. With 3-MeO PCE, I get introspective and feel my thoughts actively speed up. With this, it just feels a bit stimulating and not very introspective at all. In general, it feels quite good so far though, quite fun and enjoyable, albeit a bit strange in comparison to other novel dissos I've tried. But maybe my opinion will be more clear if I had tried 3-MeO PCP prior. At this point, I decided to eat a 20 to 40 milligram edible to see where it takes me, as I plan on smoking throughout the trip, so might as well. I proceed to eat some very spicy habanero chips, which taste good, but not as spicy as they would sober. At this point, it's been an hour and 30 minutes since my initial dosing, and my entire body is feeling like it's buzzing, almost vibrating in tune to the music. My mind feels clear-headed, focused, and I feel very awake and alert. The high is still on the stimulating side, but not forcibly so. I can lay on my bed and enjoy the effects if I choose so. It crosses my mind that this drug is definitely worthwhile, and I plan on making more journeys where it's for not only the higher doses, but also more of the low dose range, as I quite enjoy the social, trippy high low dose 3 ml PCE gives me. I proceed to take another bong rip. There's not nearly as much work to this disso as 3 ml PCE. It's more functional and stimulating and cold. It's clinical, not much introspection. So far, I prefer 3 ml PCE, but it's hard to compare. They're not the same substance, obviously, but it's the only thing I can compare to, as it's the most recent and comparable drug I've tried. My body feels cold and dissociated, but overall in a decent way. It's not my favorite dissociative at this dose, but it is interesting and worthwhile. The combination of cannabis and 3-ME PCP is good. Whoa, I feel it a lot more after walking around a bit. I feel very spaced out, and the overall frame rate has dropped. It's as if I'm overall lagging. T plus 1 hour 50. The effects are much stronger now. The redose must have kicked in. It feels so odd. It's stimulating, yet very trippy. I feel the potency now. It's strong. I feel the chemical has gotten a grasp of my entire body, and I'm exploring its effects fully now. My mind feels clear, yet more clouded than initially. It could be the edible hitting too, though. My body feels strong dissociation. Every fiber is vibrating, and there's a slight uncomfortable body load, as if the chemical is aching in my body. It could be that I haven't taken my daily kratom dose though, and I'm experiencing slight withdrawals, as I've gotten similar body aches sober previously, when taking breaks from kratom. My body feels elongated, stretched. T plus 2 hours 13. I'm tripping hard. Things look blurry. Body load has went from an all-encompassing, uncomfortable stimulating vibration to a gentle, comfortable buzzing instead. But it's starting to get harder to tell where one limb ends and the other begins. Like I'm just one mass of consciousness. Cuddling my cat is fun and enjoyable. I feel distant from reality, yet aware. T plus 3 hours. I laid in bed and enjoyed the effects for a while. Took a bong rip. I'm very fried now. Like I literally feel like I'm fried. T plus 3 hours 14. Redose 2 to 4 milligrams insufflated. Ouch. After this point, the trip doesn't get very much more eventful. I felt a bit more stimulated and tripped out from the insufflated dose, and I continued smoking weed throughout the night and enjoyed the rest of the trip. My conclusion is that, while insufflated does work well and has fast onset, the intense stinging and how caustic 3-ME PCP seems makes this ROA not worthwhile, unless it's every now and then. Orally, the bioavailability is clearly lower, but it gives different effects compared to snorted. More trippy, less stimulating, and more physical effects, such as vibrating, buzzing, etc. The effects lasted about 5 to 8 hours total, and I had no issue sleeping. The first initial dose was taken at around 1500 hours, and the last taken at around 1800 hours. Summary. Overall, an enjoyable long-lasting dissociative. Less warmth than 3-MeO PCE, 3-HO PCP, yet more stimulating. Equally or slightly more manic than 3-MeO PCE. Can get very manic for me towards the come down. Not very sedating at all. Very caustic and painful to insufflate, and has less bioavailability orally. I would probably not attempt to boof it, as I don't want to corrode my ass. But then again, the anus has a protective lining, so maybe. Anyway, that's it for the report. Thanks for reading.